Hey guys, how's it going? I'm Alejandro Perez, the CGI Nerd, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at creating this high polygon version of the Minecraft cube based off of the reference from the game of the Minecraft cube here. This is an isometric image, whereas this one is in perspective and is much higher polygon, a lot more details, some nice lighting happening on it. So I'm going to show you guys the process of doing this inside of Houdini procedurally. Well, let's get started. Okay, to start off with, we're going to create a box. The box is going to be our base object that we'll work with everything in. Let's call this the Minecraft cube. Okay, so we are going to be working directly on this object here. Right now it's a 1 by 1 by 1 cube, but we need to remember that we're going to add grass on top, so what I'm going to do is make the top be 0.9. Looking at the grass here, we can see that it does have a bit of kind of section on top that is all about grass. So, I think that is good. What we are going to need, because we're going to be assigning properties to points, and we need to increase a lot more points. We'll start off with 100 on each axis, and if we look at the grid here, we can see that that is quite a bit of detail. It's going to be a little blurry, but it's going to give us a good idea to start off with. So now that I have that, let's switch over to smooth shaded. There we go. And I'm going to create an attribute VOP. And then jump into it. I just push enter to go into that node. I might have done it a little fast, but it's here. Let's display it going here. And we want to add a turbulent noise. And that turbulent noise will connect into the color so we can visualize it a little bit easier. It's going to start off with black and white, but we'll add other colors to it. So alligator noise is fine to get the look that we're going for. The frequency, let's kick this up. Something kind of like that. Can probably go more if we wanted to. And if you don't like the pattern, you can go through and offset it so that way you have a different look along the cube. I believe, if I'm correct, a lot of Minecraft was built on purlin noise, so if you wanted to use the same kind of pattern, you got that going on there too. But I think with my test, the alligator noise looks pretty good. Okay, so that starts off there, and then we want it to make it a little bit bumpy, so let's add a displacement. The displacement here, we're going to go into the point value. Obviously this is way too strong. We'll bring it down quite a bit, and if you see, it gives us a bit of surface detail without going too crazy. You can try like not 0.4 but 0.04 and just get some sort of detail off the surface. I like that quite a bit. Okay, so let's add some color to make this look like sand or dirt. So what I want to do is do a ramp parameter, connect it in here, and then call this dirt color. And weird thing about the ramp is that you don't really change it here. What you have to do is go out of there and then affect it in the parent node here. So now I can take this black color and switch it to be kind of like a dark brown. Something kind of like that. And then the white, I'm going to switch it to be kind of here, so just a little bit more yellow, and then I do have the cube over here to kind of look as reference. So it looks like it's more saturated and probably a little bit brighter. So let's go into the saturation, add some more saturation. And I think it's a little bit too yellow. We need to push it more towards orange, but not too far. And I feel like that's starting to look a lot closer with the color there. Okay. So I'm going to save this so I don't lose any work. And then now that I've done that, looking at the reference image that I have for the cube, there's these little gray specks. I interpret those to be rocks in the dirt, so let's create those. We can create another turbulent noise. And let's visualize this so that we can see what's happening. Oops, I connected it to the vertex. I want to go to points and connect it there. There we go. So the frequency, we're going to push it up quite a bit higher because we want smaller detail. And also we're going to do a fit range. This fit range here, what we're going to want to do is kind of crush the blacks there and then bring out the white so that we can make the rocks what we need, and then we try to get it to be about the size that we want them to be and the amount that we need. So I feel like that looks pretty natural, the placement of the rocks. So now we can add a color mix. So we're going to connect it directly to the color here, and basically we have a primary color and a secondary color, then a bias. Those are the things that we're going to use. The primary color is the dirt color of the dirt. Then these rocks, they're just a mass basically, so we're going to add that to the bias. And then here we can see the color that we're actually adding. So we can add the rocks there. And it looks like maybe they're one shade darker. There we go. Okay, so that is good for the rocks. Uh-oh, we crashed. Mayday, mayday. Let's open up Houdini, see if we can recover that crash, because crashing is no fun. But Houdini has a new feature that if you're working on a file and it crashes, it tries to recover it for you. So that is exciting. So fingers crossed that that works right now, although I recently saved, so I wouldn't be losing too much work. There we go. And we can open crash file. Let's see. That's the Minecraft cube video. Yes. Do you want to open the file? Yes. It looks like we pretty much recovered everything, so I am happy with that. Okay, let's keep on working. So we have the rocks placed where we want them. Now we want to add that value to the displacement here. So because we want to add it, we can just create an add node. We're going to take the value that we have here, and then we can take this one and put it into, input 2. And then obviously this is displacing a lot more because it's going past the levels that were on the other one. But what we can do is create a fit range in between here where it's going to the displacement, and tone this down so that way we can create where the rocks are. And we want them to be displaced a little bit, maybe a little bit more than the sand, but we don't want it to go too crazy where it looks too bad. And right now, like I said, this is kind of low resolution. Let's save this. And then I'm going to go to here. Let's start off by adding a material. So this is basically like your basic dirt cube that we're working with from Minecraft. So I'm going to throw that on there. The only thing is that it's 1/10 of a unit too short because we're doing it for grass. But if we wanted to use this as a dirt cube, we can kind of develop the look here really quick because they're basically the same. Let's go to object level. We need to create a light to render also. So I'm going to create an environment light, and in the environment light I'm going to put an HDR. I do have an HDR saved already, so I'll bring that there. And then let's create a camera, and on this camera let's just make it square, and then let's lock our view to the camera for a moment so that way we can position it. Gonna do something like that, and let's go to the render view. Instead of ROP camera, we're going to go to camera 1 that we just created, and then let's render and test to see what this looks like. Hopefully it will be pretty okay. It looked a little bit dark in the viewport with the lighting. We might have to adjust some of that. There we go. It's lit enough for what we need. So this is looking pretty good right now. Let's go to the material here, surface quality, and I'm going to take the roughness and kick this up quite a bit because the dirt is not going to be like shiny like if it's wet or glossy like that. This is looking pretty nice. Another thing, like I mentioned earlier before, is if we go to the object and we actually increase the resolution, the quality of the textures and everything will increase dramatically. So let's put it at 400, 400, and 400. And we should see these areas that are pretty soft become much more realistic looking. So they look more like rock. The texture looks a lot better because there's more points to gather information from. So I like this a ton. So we're going to stick with this. If we wanted to, we can go ahead and go into the environment light and maybe increase the exposure just so that it doesn't look as dim as it is here. Make it a little bit brighter. Okay, that works out pretty well, I feel like. So that's a good base for our dirt cube, and then we're going to add grass onto this now. So let's stop this, save our project, go to scenes, and then in the Minecraft cube here, basically what we want to do is get this top surface and separate it. I'm going to go here and do a group node, so that way we can group the top section. By default it groups everything. In order to get the top, we can just get grouped by normals, put a 1 in the Y and a 0 on the Z, and you'll see that it will switch the selection soon. Oh, no, it's not going to do that because of the spread angle, so we need to tame this down. So what you want to do is make sure that you're not getting a lot of the selection on the sides there. You want to bring it down enough where you're only getting it on the top, and if we lose some of this selection on top, it's not going to be a big deal because there's going to be so much grass that you'll never notice. But if you were to actually like increase it so that you're getting some of the tops here, that's a good way to add like snow and effects like that if you wanted to, so that way you would add it on to that selection only. But I want to make sure that I only have the top section there, so that's what I'm going to do. Then I'm going to go ahead and blast. So the blast is basically deleting everything, but we'll set it by the group. When we select it by the group, it's going to delete the selection, but what we actually want is the inverse of that, so that way we get the top of the surface. Let me unlock the camera selection there. Okay, So there's a few holes, but it's not going to be a big deal. Let's go over here and visualize this cube here. Go to Object, and I'm going to turn off the visibility because we're only going to be working with the top of the surface. I'm going to create a geometry node. And that geometry node here is going to be what we're going to need to use to create the grass on the surface. So, say ground surface. Okay, and then jumping into it, we're going to do an object merge. And we're going to select that blast node right here. And that gives us the surface that we're going to be adding the grass onto. Okay, now that we have that, in order to create grass, what we're going to do is actually create fur. So I'm going to create the add fur, select the static geometry, push enter to continue, and then this is animated so we don't need to worry about that, so no enter there. And we create the grass. This is super tiny right now. What we can do, I'm going to bring the density down to like maybe 1000. $500. Maybe 500 is a little bit too low, so 1000. Oop, not 100. 1000. There we go. Then on the height, we made it 1 unit smaller, so if we put it at 0.1, that gives us a full 1 unit height cube. But the problem is that we're going to actually be bending these, so it's not going to be perfectly there. So I'm going to put it at 0.2 because I'm going to be bending them quite a bit. So I'm going to switch over to the hair tools here. So if I push C, I can go to the guide tools, and then I want to bend. Okay, so that got us in here now for the bending attribute, and we can see that it's already bent it a little bit. I'm just going to crank it all the way up to 90 and then random angle 90, so we can see that it kind of rotates it everywhere. So I like that. Let's go back out here, and on the hair gen, I'm going to decrease the density. Right now it is around 100,000. I'm going to make it 50,000. And then I'm going to take the thickness and increase the thickness. So that way it's a little bit stylized like everything that we have here. And it looks more like grass rather than individual hair strands. That looks good. And then let's go to the material. Go here to the hair shader. The root color, I'm going to set it to kind of like a darker green. And the tip color, will you set it to the brighter green? And here we can see, obviously, we got the mask that we didn't quite get everything out, but we got most of it out. So let's go back to the object level, and, oops, not out, but object. And we will go into the Minecraft cube here. And here for the group, we can try to decrease this a little bit more, so that way it doesn't have any of the grass going. And if we go jump out to this level, we can double check a little bit easier. So that looks good. We can turn the visibility on the cube and the visibility off on the ground surface. So that will be what we need here. Let's double check what the render looks like right now. We're going to go to the camera 1 and render here. It's generating the scene. It's going to take a little bit longer now. Because of all the grass that's in the scene, the poly count's going to be pretty darn high when it's rendering. So I'm going to pause for a moment. Okay, so now that we have that, it is starting to look a lot better. Right now with the shader, it's all like one even color everywhere. So what we can do is go into the grass shader here, or it's hair technically, but we're going to use it as that. And then just add randomize to each one of these attributes. It's intensity, diffuse, saturation, and so forth. So when we do that, it's going to go through and recalculate everything. You can see that we have all of it activated now. And it's going to make it look quite a bit better because there's going to be a lot of variation in real world grass. I think that looks pretty good. So the only other thing is kind of looking at it, it might be a tiny bit sparse on the grass. So let's go over here, density, let's try doubling it. So we go to 2000 for the guide. And then in the hair generate, we're at 50,000. So let's try something like 80,000. And I'll go through and calculate all of this. Give it a moment to render. Okay, so looking at this, it's looking pretty good. I think that maybe the specular is a little bit high. So going back to the hair shader, we have reflection size, reflection shift. Let's see, root bend. So if we wanted to, we can actually adjust how it goes from the root to the tip, the scale. Sometimes I like to kind of play around with that, so that way it's not just kind of a smooth transition. Let me stop this render really quick. Oh no, it's gonna crash. It completely crashed. Okay, let me open it and I'll be right back. Okay, I got it back up and rendering. Let me actually turn back the geometry here and turn off this one. Okay. Oh, I had to redo some stuff, so you can see that the grass is back here. So let's go into that cube really quick and turn that off. I thought I got everything, but obviously not. There we go. Okay. So now going back into the material, here you can adjust kind of the transition from one color to the other. So like sometimes what you can do is kind of have like this orange color on the root, but like pretty quickly like transition it to be the green color. So that will give you kind of like that brown root color on the grass. That's pretty effective. Also, we want to turn off white hairs and guard hairs. Let's look at how that renders here. Again, we're using camera 1. And let's render. I should probably like save this back into the original file rather than using the recovery file. Okay, and it's going to take a second to create everything here. It is starting to try to calculate it. You can see that we're getting a little bit of color there. It does not like something with the grass, so let's stop this really quick and let's look at the object level here. It might be because we turned off the visibility of the surface there. Usually you can get away with having it off, but let's see if it will render now. Okay, I'm going to pause it and I'll show you when it's rendered. Okay, looking at this early stage of the render, It's looking okay. Kind of like I mentioned before, though, I think the specular is really high. Okay, so jumping up in here to the intensity and reflection and things like that, we can bring these down a bit. Let's stop this render really quick just so that it doesn't crash on it. So we can bring the intensity and the reflection color down, and then, or the reflection size, and that should help some. We'll take a look at this render in a moment. I'm going to pause. Okay, so now as the render goes along, we can see that this is looking a ton better. I really like this a lot. Also looking at the shader again, we have transmission and secondary reflections, so we can start, if we wanted to, disable the secondary reflections, and we should see a result popping up here soon. Where it's more kind of green. And that could be an interesting look. I'm not sure which one I like better between the two. This one looks more like grass, so maybe that. And then transmission is going to be here. If we disable that, I mean, both of these will make it a little bit more, or less, sorry, realistic looking. But it'll get us more into the style that we're actually looking for. So I just want to get a look at the grass. And let's look at the image really quick so that we can compare it. It is right over here. So these are more desaturated than what we have over here, which is not horrible. I do feel like it should be a little bit more green, so I am going to go and enable the transmission again, and that should help it out a little bit because I like the way it kind of shined a little bit with that on. You can see kind of it really brings a little bit of life into it. And let's go back to the secondary reflections because I feel like it made it more believable when we had that on. And you can see that we're going to get some really white highlights going on. And that looks pretty good. It's just the intensity of it. There's so much of it going on. So I like that better. I just want to make sure that I go in here and maybe tone it down a little bit, so bringing in that intensity a little bit down, and that should help it out look a lot better. Okay, and then we should have all of the randomization enabled, which is good. Primary color, and then maybe on this, can we make it more saturated, more brighter? It's about as far as we can go. Can push the color a little bit further this way. Okay, and let's see what that will look like. And I mean, I'm kind of like nitpicking at this stage, but I think for our cube, what we got going on now looks pretty darn good. So I'm going to let this render completely to finish, and then I'll show you in one moment what the final render looks like. Okay, so this is how the grass turns out. We have it here rendered next to the Minecraft cube. So I like the way it looks. If we wanted to, we can even do some kind of tweaking of the levels here. I want levels. And then we can kind of like maybe brighten it up a little bit. Add a little bit of contrast. And if we want to as well, we can go to some saturation and increase the saturation a little bit. Let's see. Edit, redo levels. The saturation was just the one that I pushed a little bit too far. Image adjustments, hue and saturation. Then let's look at the saturation and make sure that we get a little bit more saturation, but not to the point where it becomes crunchy like that. Maybe somewhere like that. Let's see if I undo so we can see the difference. Yeah, I like the updated one. So yeah, that's much better. And there we go. We have our realistic cube rendered high polygon, and we have our Minecraft cube from the game here. They're both different cubes, different looks, but I am really excited to do this project. It was really fun. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Yeah, we will see you guys next time. Bye.